I cry every day. Every day. My daughter was my best friend. My best friend.
My heart aches so bad. I'll have the pain in my soul for the rest of my life.
I can't even read my whole letter, but it's hurtful. It's hurtful. It's so hurtful. He needs to sit and think about what he's done.
Kiara Brown's story begins at the tender age of 18, as she and her mother were making prom preparations. Their world turned upside down when an unexpected visitor arrived at their doorstep. Hanusha experienced the heartbreak of never saying farewell to her daughter, whose brief departure from home ended tragically. Kiara's untimely demise left her family engulfed in a profound and enduring sorrow. The perpetrator of this heinous act surrendered to authorities and received a mere 5-year imprisonment, leaving many to question the justice system's leniency. This tragic narrative unfolds, revealing the actions Kiara's family has undertaken in response to their devastating loss. During the early hours on March 26, 2018, Kiara Brown, an 18-year-old young woman, was excitedly talking to her mother, Kanisha, about her upcoming prom night. Kiara was all set to graduate from Harold St. Vincent High School in Milwaukee in May of the same year. Both mother and daughter were thrilled about the event, as they shared a strong bond. Kanisha was eager to assist her daughter in finding the ideal dress for the occasion. Next, they would converse about Kiara's aspirations following her graduation from high school. That evening, an unexpected visitor arrived at their doorstep. It was Kiara's former lover, Marvin Patterson. Although they had ended their relationship around a year ago, recently Marvin began to reach out to her again, positioning himself merely as a friend. He claimed to have something intriguing that he wanted her to look at. Kiara, in her casual attire, assumed it would be just a quick visit inside Marvin's vehicle. However, once Kiara was in the car, Marvin suddenly sped off. Fast forward to around 5:30 a.m., and a chilling 911 call startled the authorities. A caller shared a sighting of an inanimate body in a white Audi at the crossroads of 98th Street and Carmen Avenue. Local law enforcement officials quickly arrived at the scene, only to discover a young girl who appeared to be peacefully asleep in the passenger seat. The individual was identified as Kiara Brown within a short span of time. On the 27th of March, aware of the authorities in pursuit of him, Marvin Patterson surrendered himself. He had abandoned Kiara in his freshly bought Audi and fled the scene in a panic-stricken state following the terrible act he had committed, with no plan at hand. It remains a point of argument if Marvin was driven by guilt to turn himself in, if he didn't have anywhere else he could go, or perhaps he sought to win the trust of law enforcement by retelling his side of the story. This uncertainty stems from the ongoing debate regarding the nature of Kiara's end. Was it an unplanned mishap on Marvin's part, or a deliberate cold-blooded execution? When questioned by investigators, Marvin recounted the incident of the previous night and claimed to have planned a surprise visit to Kiara's residence just to flaunt his new Audi. Nonetheless, he didn't inform her that they would be going for a drive. Instead, he simply invited her into his stationary car, and within moments, they were on the move. Marvin mentioned that he drove the Audi to an alley where they engaged in conversation. During their discussion, Kiara inquired about a firearm in his glove box. Marvin retrieved it, mentioning that he had recently acquired it for protection against street violence if necessary. He placed it in the cup holder. Then, Kiara attempted to take a selfie with the gun. Observing this, Marvin acted quickly to wrestle it away from her in an effort to prevent a potential accident. Unfortunately, that's when the gun discharged, striking Kiara in the head. Overwhelmed with panic, Marvin abandoned her in the car and escaped on foot. This was his initial account. However, upon being questioned for a second time, investigators pressured Marvin to reveal the entire truth. Marvin altered his narrative entirely. He claimed that after parking in the alley, they began conversing and eventually started arguing. In a mock fighting scenario, he took out the gun and aimed it at her head, which is when it accidentally discharged, much to Marvin's surprise. In both accounts, Marvin insisted he never intended for this to occur. However, the detectives were skeptical. If Marvin didn't intend to end Kiara's life that night, why did he show up at her house uninvited and take her away without her permission? Furthermore, why did his story shift so dramatically between the two interrogations? Was there more to that night than he was admitting? Marvin Patterson was arrested and charged with first-degree reckless homicide and the use of a dangerous weapon. Ultimately, it was up to a jury to determine if the incident was an accident or not. That April, Kanesha's face appeared frequently on Milwaukee television. She was determined to shed light on the sorrow that had engulfed her life. More importantly, she sought legal retribution for her child. Kanesha, along with Kiara's close friends and family, were convinced that this was no mere accident. Absolutely. From enticing Kiara to leave her house to taking off without her consent and mysteriously producing a gun in the car, all this reeked of foul play. It was evident that Marvin's interest in Kiara was far more intense than her interest in him. For Kiara, their relationship was a thing of the past, and she had severed contact with him almost a year before the unfortunate incident. Yet Marvin never stopped trying to reach out, and in this instance, he arrived at her home armed. It's near impossible not to interpret this as a scorned lover with an "if I can't have you, nobody can" frame of mind. It's incredibly heartbreaking to think about how a single violent and impulsive individual can wield such control over another innocent life using just one weapon. The whole ordeal left Kanesha shattered.
I cry every day, every day. My daughter was my best friend, my best friend.
She expressed that all the justice in the world can't bring her daughter back.
Even if I get answers, that won't be enough. That won't be enough.
Towards the end of 2018, it seemed as though Marvin might spend his entire life behind bars.
Convicted, Patterson faces more than 60 years in prison. What we've learned today about the moments leading up to Kiara Brown's death proves just how senseless it really was.
Marvin started crying as his bail was determined.
Today, handcuffed in court, Patterson cried as his bail was set.
It's one of those moments on why young people, in my estimation, should not be in possession of firearms. Inexperienced, unable to properly deal with your firearm.
The results of Marvin's trial surprised Kiara's family a year later. Marvin Patterson and the prosecutors came to a plea deal in August 2019. He entered a guilty plea to murder by careless use of a dangerous weapon in the revised courts. He received a 10-year prison term with the option of release after 5 years on October 10th of that year.
5 years behind bars. That's how long one Milwaukee man will spend after admitting to shooting and killing his girlfriend.
Marvin Patterson admitted to killing Kiara Brown last spring. She was shot inside a car. Tony Atkins was in the court as Patterson learned his fate.
5 years in prison and 5 years on extended supervision. That's how long Marvin Patterson will spend in the correctional system thanks to amended charges.
Numerous individuals tracking this case felt that Marvin's punishment was excessively lenient. He had claimed a life, and according to the majority, it appeared to be premeditated as well. How was it possible for him to merely receive a few years in prison? The judge said to Marvin the following:
"I can see that it affects you, Mr. Patterson, but this is not a probation type case. This is not a case where you're going to be going immediately on extended supervision. You're going to have to go to prison on this case."
Marvin allegedly received the longest prison term possible for the kind of offense he was ultimately accused of. Marvin conveyed his regret for killing his ex-girlfriend after receiving his sentence.
My heart aches so bad, I'll have the pain in my soul for the rest of my life.
He reiterated his unintentional discharge of the gun and expressed eternal remorse for his rash and hasty actions. However, Kanesha made it clear to him that the harm was irreversible and his actions couldn't be undone.
I cry every day, every day. My daughter was my best friend, my best friend.
Kanesha obviously disagreed with the short sentence.
I can't even read my whole letter, but it's hurtful, it's hurtful, it's so hurtful. He needs to sit and think about what he's done.
Kanesha told CBS she did not have a bad bone in her body. "I can find nothing bad to say. Not just because she's my daughter, not because of the situation. She was a genuinely good person." As per her aunt, who set up a GoFundMe campaign to pay for Kiara's funeral expenses, she said Kiara was the sweetest child and young adult I knew. Simply beautiful inside and out. She was a beautiful, spirited young woman who came from good family values. A student who attended Vincent High School and worked a job for over a year. She had many friends and everyone who knew her loved her. What makes this situation so heartbreaking is the fact that Kiara was nothing more than a beacon of kindness in her community. The details surrounding her relationship with Marvin remain murky, though they appeared to be on good terms for almost a year before the unfortunate incident happened. The question remains, was Marvin plotting a sinister plan born of suppressed disgruntlement? Or was this a tragic fallout of a botched attempt to win Kiara back? As of late 2024, Marvin Patterson is a free man, counting the year he spent in jail awaiting trial towards his 5-year sentence, and is now on probation. Kanesha, on the other hand, finds this reality hard to comprehend. Feeling that justice has not been served, Kiara's family has opted to channel their efforts towards raising awareness about the prevalence of domestic violence among young couples. A recent report highlights that 1 in 12 teenage girls in the United States are victims of domestic violence. However, The family believes the actual number to be higher.
It's like 1 in 3 youth have experienced that. That's quite a bit. And it can be very volatile.
For this reason, we must recognize the warning signs and flee before the worst happens.
He was perfect. He was charming and handsome. So quickly that he said he loved me within the first 2 weeks.
You know, a lot of manipulative people engage in this behavior known as love bombing. In the first few weeks, they show you a lot of love and gifts in an attempt to get your full attention. Subsequently, the presents start to run out, and they start putting increasing demands on you. They may also attempt to cut you off from your loved ones so that you are solely dependent on them for financial support, affection, or even care.
Subtle as it grows that you don't see what's happening.
Emily found herself under the constant surveillance of her boyfriend, who insisted on dictating her every action and decision.
I saw the tracking, the calling on the phone, and constantly wanting to know where I was and who I was with.
Then things grew worse.
For me, it was physical photos that were passed around.
Recognizing the initial indicators of a toxic relationship is crucial. This way, you're aware when it's essential to leave.
You're in a situation and when the person is extremely jealous, when they're controlling, and they want to isolate you from family.
Kiara's relatives were in the dark about her association with Marvin. She remained silent about such circumstances, and even though they eventually ended, Kiara never shared the complete tale with her mother. There's a good chance feelings of envy and bitterness influenced Marvin's choice that night, except he just wanted to regain things with his former partner. What's your opinion about what transpired that night? Also, was Marvin's penalty appropriate? I appreciate your viewership. Do express your perspectives on this case through a comment, and before leaving, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Catch you in the next episode.